The trade deadline is just a week and a half away, and the Phoenix Suns are headed in just the direction they want to be. One forward breaking out, another one looking to be moved soon. Could it really be that things are going the Suns' way? We'll talk about it today. Locked on Suns. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Check that out. You can find it on Twitter. On this show, we are talking all things Mikal Bridges, Jae Crowder, Mat Ishbia, lots to get to. You can find us on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, where you can hit subscribe there and drop a comment below with your take, your celebration of Mikal Bridges' huge game, and get this show in your feed every single Monday through Friday by hitting subscribe. You can also follow along on Twitter at LockedOnPHXSuns, where I dropped a request for questions. So we'll get to some of those today as well. Brendon Dueñas is here. He is a writer at Bright Side of the Sun, joining us as he does every Monday. He is at ZonaHoops _ on Twitter. Today's show, guys, brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Brandon, I didn't know if we were going to talk about Suns-Spurs game today. To be honest with you, I thought it's a Saturday game, which means I don't have to talk about it, quote unquote. And here Mikal Bridges comes and changes my mind, basically. He had an amazing performance, continuing a real stretch for himself where he's looked like a different player. You're a very selective tweeter. Sometimes I try to peruse your timeline to see how you were feeling during a game, and you don't give a lot. So I just want to ask you, like, was this game something new to you? Or did it feel like this is just what we should expect from Mikal Bridges now? Because I think there's an argument on either side that this could just be what he is.
Yeah, I think it was one of the most dominant performances we've seen from a Sun not named Devin Booker in terms of just completely taking the game over on both ends. Also shout out to Chris Paul for getting them there in the first place. He had an incredible game, and since he's come back, they're 3-1. He's putting up 22 and 11 on like 55% shooting. So he kind of did the heavy lifting to keep them in good position against the Spurs. And obviously the Spurs scored on I think it was 12 straight possessions to force overtime. But that overtime period from Mikal was just unlike anything I've seen from him. And I think CP kind of deferring to him to run the offense and initiate and go seek out contact. That was a little bit new to me in terms of, just the aggression from Mikal. So if this is the norm, I think once Book's back, it's really going to open up a lot of things for this offense. So definitely something to be excited about. I don't know if it's going to be the norm, but if Mikal can make it, the semi-norm, then that would be terrific.
I saw or heard a little bit of debate too about this side of it, which is just sort of like the fact that it was the Spurs made people question something about, because I agree. I mean, and the part that I really want to focus on is the fact that Chris Paul said post game that Mikal came up to him and basically said, give me the ball. It's not working. Whatever we're doing, the game is slipping out of our grasp. The Suns were up 11 going into the fourth quarter, I believe. Double digits up until the last few minutes of the game. And Mikal was like, I'm not letting us lose another one of these. And he, got to the basket a couple times, made a couple defensive plays, finished over Jakob Poeltl, drew some fouls, got the job done. I don't really feel like the fact that it's the Spurs matters to me, because it's kind of weird, I guess, in my opinion, that you would look at the Spurs and be like, well, the Suns shouldn't be losing to a team like that. What an embarrassing performance. But then also say Mikal rising to the moment and preventing that loss from happening is also not a big achievement. It's well, which one is it? Was it a team that you needed to go out and get the job done against? Or was it an easy team that none of it matters? Like, I guess that's sort of, it doesn't feel like it adds up to me. I think a win is a win. Sohan and Keldon Johnson were both playing awesome. The Spurs have NBA players, just like every NBA team that can push you on a random Saturday. I think him doing it in this context makes me feel just as good as if it was any team. You know, I want to continue to see it, and I would like to continue to see it against great teams, but this is a stepping stone just like any other game would be for me.
Yeah, 100%. And all reps are good reps in the regular season because, like, ultimately what it comes down to is how ready your team is for the playoffs. And, you know, last season, the Suns were so focused, it seemed like, on the regular season, just, you know, stacking the wins, and they didn't really experiment as much as like I would have liked just for specific playoff settings. And I think this year they've kind of been forced into it. It's kind of the polar opposite. They're not really trying to experiment. They just kind of have to. So then we're seeing, you know, growth out of Mikal. Cam's had his moments since he's been back. And, you know, now it's just about DeAndre stepping up in those late game situations. And I think this young core just, you know, they kind of take their turns where they go on these streaks, but just trying to get them more consistent to where this is, you know, what you're going to expect from Mikal on a game-by-game basis. If he can make that leap, then this team truly is a title contender.
I agree. I mean, we'll talk about trades a little bit later. I think that's obviously the missing link. I don't even know if they – well, look, we did have it wasn't even a question. It's another person on Suns Twitter just mad about DeAndre Ayton this morning, which I promise you don't have to keep doing. Everybody can just relax and enjoy their weekend. There's some nice football games on here on this Sunday, but people can't help themselves. Who was like, can we cut it with the DeAndre hate? Like I said, I checked your Twitter timeline. I know I didn't tweet any DeAndre hate, but apparently we're in the crossfire. You brought him up, so now it's going to feel like we were hating. I don't know if they need him to be. To me, it was always one or the other, right? Or even Cam. Like, I didn't really think Cam was going to rise to quite that level just based on what his skill set is and injury questions and, you know, stamina, all that stuff, health. But one of those three guys, to me, it was all it was really going to take for me to feel a good deal better about this team. So I don't know. I feel like they're in a good spot even without Cam, or I'm sorry, without DeAndre. Like, he has to be at least at the level he was at in the last platform, right, in 2021 when they made the finals. Let's get back to that level. But I don't know if it's better if Mikal's going to be a version of this guy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think DeAndre's defense is the main thing I'm looking at, and just the engagement, because offensively, if their wings can step up and rise to the occasion and, you know, do some more self-creation, it makes DeAndre's job a lot easier on offense. So, you know, for the most part, it's just kind of, I think I've said this a few times, just the young core stepping up by committee. That's the main thing. Just kind of having everyone chip in and fill in the weaknesses that they do have on this roster around Book. You know, we saw in the playoffs at times it looked like they were kind of looking for permission to do stuff, and that's just like the type of stuff you can't have. You have to be quick decision makers and, you know, just, you know, not shy away from the moment. And that's just kind of what this young core struggled with last postseason and the NBA Finals. Obviously, it's a lot of those guys' first playoff run, so that's, you know, you're learning on the fly there. But I think for the most part, this young core, if they can just find a way to gel together at the right moment, that to me, that it's still a team that could beat anyone in the West. And then you get to the NBA Finals, you never know what can happen.
Hey, Mikal is at 19 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds in 14 games in January. 45% from the field. He struggled from the field in December. We all remember the Rockets game and some of those other ones. 38% from deep this month, and still a pretty elite free throw shooter, even though he doesn't necessarily get a ton of those attempts up. And his usage is at 21%. No, to me, that usage of cracking 20 was always the big thing of, you know, if you divide it up, an NBA player should have a 20% usage because there's 5 of them on the floor out of 100. You just do the math there. It's not really how it works, but at the very least, you got to be above that, in my opinion, to feel like you're a real threat to the opposing defense. And he's above that now. He's doing it efficiently. He's distributing. I mean, 5 assists a game. Like, that's, I know it's assists per game and you can take it or leave it. He plays a ton of minutes, but I mean, he's in no other month this year has he even been over 4. And now he's almost at 5. It's so well-rounded and it's so efficient. It's really crazy. Honestly, like, if you had told me after that Rockets performance that we would be getting a 14-game stretch like this, I know we might have been hurt, but I wouldn't have believed you, or I wouldn't have thought it would happen this season. And he's turned it around and gotten even better than I think I expected him to be. And like you said, it's like almost a perfect correlation between how much better Mikal gets and how much their championship ceiling goes up. It's like 1-to-1 between those two things.
Yeah, 100%. And the playmaking, like you said, is, sometimes you have to just look at the eye test too. And I feel like he's a more confident passer now. Like the 5 assists per game, if you're getting heavy minutes, like you said, a lot of players can kind of get those counting stats, but it's just the way he's getting them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's the way he's getting them too. And like sometimes he's making the right pass and then it leads to like an extra pass that leads to the assist, that like the old fashioned hockey assist. So, I think just his ability to share the ball and play it whenever he's confident on offense, like I said, like he can get whatever shot he wants. It's just a matter of him believing in a shot and just, sticking to it because, sometimes I feel like his confidence, similar with Ayton, like when those guys are, in a little bit of a slump or their shot's not falling, you could kind of see it in their body language. But Mikal, like during the streak, you can kind of tell even when a shot isn't falling, he's keeping his head up and keeping the confidence going. So I think that's made a huge difference for this little offensive leap he's on right now. And, he has to keep that same mindset going forward.
Absolutely. I talked about one Suns forward making a step forward. That's obviously Mikal Bridges. Another one could finally be on his way out. That, of course, is Jae Crowder. We'll talk about the latest rumors related to him and why the market is still strong, despite everybody's nerves and anxiety that it might deplete as time went on. It does not seem to have happened that way. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks basically came in and turned daily fantasy on its head. We have, as Brandon and I are recording, football playoffs, conference championship weekend right here. A day like this, infinitely better when you have your own lineup. And we all know, there's leagues, there's head-to-head stuff, but there's nothing quite like Prize Picks. The reason being, you pick 2 to 6 players and not put them into a lineup or put them into a pool or a league, but just if they will score more or less than their Prize Picks player projection, and you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. It's not competing against other people. It's just you versus those projections. They offer projections on any sport you love, whether that is the NFL or something like the NBA, WNBA, men's or women's college basketball, even Euro basketball, cricket, stuff all over the world. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and they're operational in over 30 states, including Arizona. So download the Prize Picks app now. Go to prizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 right back into your account. They will match it, they will double it, and then you can keep playing. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Brandon, I feel like this is a little bit of a victory lap. I know like our parents tell us not to brag when we get things right, but sometimes you have to here on podcasts. And I feel like the first show we did together, is that right, was talking about why being patient with Crowder was going to pay off for the Suns. I've held pretty steady on that. And lo and behold, we are about a week and a half before the trade deadline. You hear well, what if his conditioning is not right? Or why would anyone want to bring on a bad attitude guy like that? And nevertheless, I'm seeing everybody's talking about Crowder to the Bucks. That's like any podcast you turn on, any article you read, any TV show you watch, it's going to say that. Then you have the Miami Herald saying, according to a Western Conference source, the Heat remain interested in acquiring Suns and former Heat forward Jae Crowder. Sounds like the Suns don't want Duncan Robinson, which I can't blame them for. So those negotiations are ongoing. I'm not saying the Suns are going to get an amazing deal. I don't know what it'll look like. We don't know how aggressive they'll be, but they're going to get a good deal for Crowder. They're going to get something back that's of value, and that hasn't changed. So we were right. We can pat ourselves on the back here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with, some of the comments on the YouTube channel, getting a little wild. You got to take victory laps when you can. We're not perfect, but we'll try our best to, get everything to the best of our knowledge. And I think the Crowder situation we kind of nailed in terms of just being patient, not taking a deal just to take one, because like I'm sure the Suns could have accepted, 10 plus offers by now that would just not be inspiring or move the needle or do anything special. And that's James Jones, like love him or hate him. That's one thing he's very good at, is making sure that he's not going to accept a deal he doesn't like. So I don't think his value's dropped at all. If anything, at this point, with all the injuries starting to stack up, getting late in the season, teams kind of need to add depth. And Bobby Portis just went down for the Bucks, so there could be a little more desperation there. That's kind of the benefit of waiting a little bit sometimes is, as you get closer to the playoffs, these teams start to realize like, hey, my playoff rotation's not set. We need a seventh guy or an eighth guy, and that could be Crowder. So for a lot of these teams, so definitely keep an eye out. I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of which third team steps in, or if they can get enough capital from doing a deal straight up with the team.
Yeah, it feels like a 3-team thing just based on what we've heard. Feels the most likely, but like you said, you never know. There could be a trade out there that's 1-for-1 that makes sense for the Suns, and they'll do it if that happens. I think to be clear, the victory lap is not like they've made a Crowder trade and you and I are celebrating that we got it right. Like they still have to do the deal. But I think the point that the point that we've made is like there was going to be a market. I think there were a lot of Suns fans who were worried that Crowder being a malcontent or, teams thinking he's out of shape or any of this stuff was going to end up where teams just didn't want him. And there was a little bit of noise a couple weeks ago of like, well, why would anyone want to trade for him when they know the Suns could just buy him out, and it's like we always hear that around the deadline, and then it ends up being that teams a lot of the time do go ahead and trade that player, and another team does pony up for him. So I think that's still there. The part that's interesting to me is, and like you said, I mean the market being at least what it was. I think if you're making the case, or at least thinking about could the market actually be stronger as we get closer? I mean, one thing is the deadline always gins up the price of some guys. It lowers the price of other players. Like the Raptors aren't going to get 55 draft picks like they seem to want for their core, but we don't know who's going to be a seller, right? Like that's a lot of the chatter right now around the NBA is like, well, we don't know if this team's going to actually sell. The Jazz, the Magic, like all, whatever, the Hawks. And then the Suns we know Jae Crowder is getting traded. You know what I mean? Like there's no question mark there. And so if I'm a team like Milwaukee, like Miami, that feels a little uncertain about my rotation, wants to be more competitive than I am, would I rather just get a deal done, do what it takes to go out and get Jae Crowder, who I have intimate familiarity with, if I'm either team, either playing against him or having had him on my team in the past, rather than being like, all right, let's see what the Jazz do with Malik Beasley, or, let's see if so-and-so actually becomes available. Like, let me just, like the Lakers just did with Hachimura, right? Let me just give up stuff and go get a player I want. And I feel like we actually could see a Crowder trade, if it is just Crowder, maybe even sooner than the deadline, of somebody just finally saying, you know what, screw it. But then there's the other side, right, of maybe the Suns make it a 3-teamer. Maybe they add more to Crowder to go out and get somebody if they want to be aggressive. There's all this stuff up in the air, but I could easily see a team just saying, you know what, like 3 seconds and this guy, and let's go get it done.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a couple of things I just want to touch on with the whole deadline thing is the play-in game is like it's kind of a double-edged sword where, yes, there's more teams that are competitive and, the playing games are fun as hell. But on the other side of that, when it comes to the trade deadline, you have all these teams that are kind of lurking. They're like a game or two out, and they're like the 11th or 12th seed, and they're like, we could probably make the playing game. We can make a push here. So it's just kind of eliminates those potential trade partners, because everyone thinks they're a buyer or seller. They're not really sure at this point. So that's kind of why I think the trade market's been so slow. And that's Suns fans kind of, it seems like they talk as if there's all these trades flying left and right, when in reality, there's been 2 trades. One of them was like a non-deal. The other one was just, Hachimura to LA. So it's not like the Suns are missing out on a ton of trades flying around. It's just a matter of, once this market, I feel like there's going to be a couple dominoes that fall once teams decide their direction, which at this point of the season, it still seems like there's at least 5 or 6 teams that could go either way, and it wouldn't shock me. And And that's just a product of the playing game. So, love the playing game or hate it. That's just kind of what it's done. And I think this is going to be a trend every single year, just with how many teams can, find themselves in contention for a play-in spot or playoff spot. So, it's just been a slow market, but I think hopefully it's not going to continue to be this slow. And once a couple of teams make up their mind, it's going to start, really popping off.
I think that's a great way to put it, because I haven't bought this idea that, last year there was a play-in game, right? And we saw huge trades go down between Sabonis and Harden and some other fairly big ones, aside from that. And yet then this year you hear, the trade deadline means nobody's really the play-in means nobody's really tanking. The trade deadline's quiet, this and that. And it's like, I don't really buy that. And I've said that on the show, but I think the way you're putting it is much more accurate, where it's not necessarily that it means less teams do sell. It might just take teams a lot longer to decide whether they will. I think in the end, maybe a couple less teams decide to give up their players and sell, quote unquote. But I think in the end, we're still going to see plenty of deals going back and forth, because there's only so much you can really delude yourself of saying, we're going to make a run, we're going to win in the first round. It's like, you can do what the Charlotte Hornets have done the past couple of years and get swamped in the play-in game, but what does that really get you, especially if it's a road game? Like, you're not even making money off of that appearance. It's just to say you did it, right? So I totally agree with you. Zachary Cohen, who is a local media guy here in Phoenix, has a question for us, Brandon, to wrap up this segment. Just a Crowder trade prediction, not who you want them to get, not who we want the Suns to get, but what will actually end up happening with this Crowder trade. I don't really feel like I have an exciting one, so I'll let you go first. Maybe you don't either, but let's give it our best guess here.
Yeah, mine's not too exciting either. I think that whole Milwaukee, Houston, Phoenix 3-way deal is going to end up coming together somehow. I don't know which names or how it's going to go down exactly, but I think where there's smoke, there's fire. So this one's kind of kept popping up over and over again. So that's what I'm going to go with on that one.
Yeah, it's hard to get a read on Houston. It feels like they're being stubborn a little bit. If they don't trade Eric Gordon, it would just like the league needs to create an investigation into like inhumane working conditions, making that man continue to play basketball for that franchise. He's just tired of it, and we all know. But I don't know what they're going to do, so I won't necessarily say it'll be the Rockets, but I will say Crowder is going to be a Milwaukee Buck. And I don't think Grayson Allen will be a Sun. So that means there will be a third team that Grayson Allen will go to, that the Suns will get a player back from. I'm not going to go so far as to say it will be the Rockets, because maybe that is a little bit of my I don't want it to be, although I like KJ Martin, but Eric Gordon less and less. I'm a little less confident about him, but
I'm with you.
That's my prediction. All right. We heard some more reporting, not just on the trade side of things, but on the ownership side of things, with the Phoenix Suns reportedly, their new owner reportedly stocking up with some potential new hires here for the team when he gets installed on February 8th is the date that we are assuming will happen. We'll talk about who those guys might be and what it means for everyone else already in place after one more quick word from TurboTax. That's right. Go to TurboTax now and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you instead. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do, not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes, unpack a moving box of not taxes, taste not taxes, even sing not taxes a lullaby. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can just sit back and relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? No, that's basically where you would be at if you just went ahead and went over to TurboTax. So go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. That's Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes is required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Okay, Brandon. So Michael Scotto over at Hoops Hype had a report that put into detail what I think we had heard from people like Bill Simmons, Brian Windhorst. It's been talked around as Mat Ishbia has started to get put into place as the owner. We know he was at a Suns game. He's apparently been, around the facility. Maybe even an introductory meeting, I think, was put out there with staff the day before the game he was at. All this stuff. His presence is being felt, and it sounds, according to Baxter Holmes of ESPN, like Mat Ishbia will be installed officially with a press conference and all the legal stuff checked off and cleared on February 8th, which of course would be one day before the trade deadline. And what Scotto had was that Ishbia is expected to make some hires in the not too distant future, maybe before the end of the season. It even sounded like the two names that he listed, Brandon, that I want to get your thoughts on are Mateen Cleaves, who people will know as the former Michigan State star. Obviously, Mat Ishbia was on that team, which we all heard about when he first made the bid to buy the team. And then, well, the other thing about Cleaves is he's also currently working for Mat Ishbia's mortgage company, which to me makes him probably the more likely of the two. And then you have Paul Rivers, which is a name that I literally learned when I read this article, who has been like the chief of staff / like number two, sort of, it seems like, to Sam Presti over in Oklahoma City for a number of years, like almost a decade. And that one also aligns with some stuff we had heard, because we heard Bill Simmons say Sam Presti's name as a potential hire. So the fact that Michael Scotto had those two names specifically enough to report them makes me feel like they are legitimate candidates to be brought on. We have a question about this from Twitter that I want to get to, but first, just what are your thoughts on not only Ishbia potentially hiring those two people, but him being aggressive right away and bringing in his people, maybe even before his first season as owner is done?
Yeah, it's not surprising, honestly. I think, especially since the Suns have kind of a pretty stable front office and organization, I don't think there's going to be as many sweeping changes as you might see in some other ownership groups where they want to come in and blow everything up. I think he kind of wants to walk that line of trying to incorporate his touch into something that's already working and make it better. So I think bringing these guys in that he's familiar with and have basketball experience, NBA experience, makes sense. And like you said, the connection with Sam Presti that we heard kind of tossed around, of Oklahoma City front office employee being linked to the Suns with the ties to Ishbia is not all that much of a shock, I would say. And then, his former teammate, like you said, I think it doesn't hurt to bring in the more basketball minds, as long as you're not making too many sweeping moves, which I don't think he will. I think the Suns front office staff in general is a little bit thin compared to most front offices in terms of they kind of have a very almost like it's built like a pyramid, the way they kind of structure their front office, where there's not a ton of decision makers at the top or high level executives. So I think
That's true.
Adding more names to the front office can't hurt at this point. We'll see if he's planning on replacing anyone or letting people go, but I think the more the merrier. Bring on as many basketball minds as you can. More decision makers can't hurt.
That's a great description of it, because I've heard a lot of people like the perception that the Suns front office is very bare bones is a little bit outdated. They've hired a lot since that rumor started to go around, and like that even since that Kevin Arnovitz article from last summer about how they don't care about the draft, they've hired a number of people even since then. And this is not me carrying water for them. It's just the truth. Anyone can go look at their staff directory on their team website. Real GM has it. They've hired a number of analytics people. They hired Morgan Cato as an assistant GM. They've hired another guy from Baylor as like a kind of half front office, half coaching staff type of liaison, which is a pretty common position that NBA teams will have. All this stuff that is like a support staff. But I think it's totally fair to say that they don't have like a very well-rounded top of that pyramid. And so maybe this, especially, I lean a little bit toward, actually, maybe both of them would be good. I don't really know. I mean, Mateen Cleaves is not somebody who's like front office skill set we know very well. Obviously, the Rivers guy would be a little bit more obvious what he would come in and what role he would play. I think somebody like a chief of staff, which the Suns, all front offices kind of have, but In some cases, it's a little more administrative, like the person who schedules the meetings and makes sure all of James Jones' family has like tickets to every game. Like, but a real person who would be involved with the basketball operations, I really think that could be beneficial, especially someone with as much experience and high-level experience as an Oklahoma City Thunder executive would with those KD years, the Russ and Paul George year, everything else. Cleaves, I mean, he's like a leadership coach for the mortgage company right now, which is a little unorthodox, I would say. But at the same time, he would have the background in basketball, and I could see him getting along well with James Jones and Monty Williams. He kind of fits the nature of what the front office already is. The thing I want to ask you about too, though, which Baxter Holmes had when he was writing up the timing stuff, is, and this type of move would reinforce that this is probably going to happen, that Mat Ishbia is probably going to be fairly hands-on. What's your feeling on that? Because I think we kind of kid ourselves that any owner is like hands-off. I think everybody is pretty hands-on. I would say like maybe Toronto and San Antonio are the two where we really could say that they're not very hands-on and it's worked. But other than that, I would say the other 28 teams probably have pretty hands-on ownership. But there's levels to it, and this seems like another level, especially for a guy who's young, buying into the league for the first time, and has like some basketball experience where he'll probably feel like he knows some things compared to, you know, the rich guy who owns like a cruise ship or something, you know. What do you think about a hands-on Mat Ishbia as he takes over?
Yeah, I know it's funny because a lot of Suns fans read that piece in the article, and they're kind of had a little PTSD from the whole Sarver situation. But I promise you, it's a good thing that your owner wants to be hands-on if as long as their head's in the right place in terms of, I think he's going to put the decision makers around, because like, you know, he built a very successful company. So he's not dumb. Like he knows that he's going to have to hire some smart executives to make the personnel decisions. But I think in terms of who he handpicks and how the actual organizations run day-to-day business ops, all that, he's going to be very involved in and try to really change the culture here in Phoenix. That's something I think, translates on the court and off of it. So I think in terms of, you know, is he going to veto trades, or is he going to be the one, you know, ultimately, just kind of controlling whoever the GM is? I don't think it's going to get to that point. But I could see him definitely being, like you said, just in a hands-on approach in terms of, you know, he's going to handpick his staff. He's going to make sure that the Suns are winning at all costs. I think that's kind of the mindset he's got. So, it fits right into James Jones's line of thinking. So I think it wouldn't shock me at all if the trade market does pick up, if they just went all in and made a swing, which we can talk about later. But, with all their draft picks, like, I don't think the Suns are going to make a draft pick for the next X amount of years. I would say the next 5 drafts, just, throw out your big boards with Ishbia and Jones running the show.
I do kind of wonder, having the Oklahoma City guy, though, maybe they would value the draft a little bit more if they had someone on staff who had the expertise and familiarity with, like, what does it really look like to build out a scouting department? What does it really look like to invest in this stuff? And I just kind of think James Jones has no use for it. And his job was very clear when he got hired, which is stop making us an embarrassing laughingstock. And he's done that. But there's a different approach that I think will need to happen to sustain going forward. I don't necessarily think Mateen Cleaves or Mat Ishbia are like entrenched in high school sophomore tape right now. So you probably would need to think about a different direction there. But I think that my read on it is the same as yours. I do think it will be natural to hear some friction or, questions about, maybe somebody does get let go. I wouldn't take that as a warning sign of like problems. I think it's natural. And I think, as we've seen in all these investigations and stuff from ESPN on the business ops side, keeping the same people in place for just the sake of it because they're close with the owner or they've been good in the past. Like, I just, especially in sports, this stuff just turns over fast. And so if somebody in the front office or, somebody on the coaching staff were to leave unexpectedly, I wouldn't say that's like Suns fans should panic. I just think we should expect that. And if you were excited when Sarver was decided to sell the team, you got to just take what comes with that. Like James Dolan is a good example of somebody who's hands off, and that's bad, right? Like he's not meddling. He just doesn't seem to care as long as the Knicks continue to make him money. It's not always good to be hands off. It can be good to be hands on, like you're saying. So we'll see what all moves materialize. The next time we talk, Brandon, we will be able to get some more trade deadline predictions next Monday. We'll have 2 games between now and then, the Raptors and the Hawks. Aaron Edwards will join later in the week. So a full week of shows. Hit follow, hit subscribe. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to start your week. Hopefully you do it every day the rest of the week. In the meantime, here on this Monday, go make Locked On NBA your second listen to get caught up with everything going on the whole rest of the league. That show available on all podcast platforms as well. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.